At Parker's Run, where Bonnie, Mike, and Sarita were waiting for the others after successfully escaping the horde of walkers. Sarita was bitten, and by the looks of it, she did not have that long before reanimation. Who would be the first to put her down? The mystery none of them have yet decided. Mike and Bonnie were both in the current position at hand while was expanding and standing outside of Parker's Run. Look, we cannot just sit here and do nothing while Sarita turns, Mike explained before folding his arms together. What if they don't come? What if they don't make it? I know what you're saying, Mike, but they'll be here soon, Bonnie assured, but deep down she was not certain when they would return in one piece. Not at all. Nevertheless, she had hoped that they had returned. Mike then turned around to face the way they came, caught something in the corner of his eye. It was as if a miracle had happened. Even to this day and age, he watched in shock for a moment when four familiar faces approached them. I don't believe it. Wow, it's been so long since we saw you all, Bonnie admitted to them when they were close and standing at least a mere couple feet away from them. We were beginning to think Mike and I were the only ones that made it. Well, besides you know who, Mike said, did not want to say her name for anyone who he was referring to. He turned around towards Parker's Run, where Sarita was leaning up against the fountain statue, barely holding on to her life. Her skin was pale and her eyes were going yellow. She was not going to last much longer. Now that you're all here, I hope we can all make a plan, Bonnie suggested, trying to change the subject into something they need to discuss about. How's Sarita doing? Lee inquired. That question already he had an answer to. He just didn't know what to bring out the worst words immediately. Both Mike and Bonnie turned towards each other for a moment, their expressions to tell each other that neither of them wished to say, but there was no avoiding the question. Unfortunately, Mike was the one to answer. She's not going to last much longer. I hate to say it, but she's going to change soon. Who's going to be the one to do it? Jane inquired, suspecting no one amongst their group had even thought of that since witnessing that walker bite Sarita had. Jane! Rebecca snapped, still annoyed that Jane continued to say stuff like this. I know it ain't easy, but it's better if she never came back as one of them, Jane explained, unable to imagine the unbearable pain of her becoming a walker. I know it's a tough decision to make, Rebecca stated, not sure if she would ever bring herself to kill her. She's never killed a walker since the world began, and she's not sure if she could start now. I know it's not easy, guys, Mike admitted, never becoming a to-kill person who had not yet turned a walker, even though in his own strength. That did not make it any easier. There are no walkers around here, so that even one of them can be drawn many. No one responded to his statement. Instead, each one of them walked into Parker's Run to spread out a little, getting to know the area a bit easier, since they were new here and might be staying for a while. Lee took a note that Carly, Luke, and Sarah were nowhere to be seen. He approached Bonnie to ask her, hoping that he had seen her last. If he was lucky, she might have been here around this part. Bonnie, have you seen any sign of Carly, Luke, and Sarah? I'm sorry, Lee, but we haven't seen any sign of them, Bonnie admitted, lowering her head slightly with a sad expression. I'm sure they're fine, though. We're beginning to think none of you made it, yet here you are. Thanks, Bonnie, Lee thanked, with a slight smile across his face. He stood to the others eyed Sarita, who had fallen down to her side and began coughing, meaning she did not have that much longer to go. He shifted his attention towards the others, who wished to not bring it up again. But it had to be done. Guys, I think it's time we know, Mike agreed, folding his arms together as he waited for whoever to be the volunteer to end her life, preventing reanimation. Who was going to do it? There was no response. Clementine was too young to do this, although she's killed walkers in the past. Rebecca had no experience in killing people. Mike and Bonnie killed multiple walkers, but never someone who knew was alive. Bonnie had killed a person once, but that was an accident. Sarita, Jane was not known to kill people. That leaves Lee. He sighed and beckoned for Clementine with her hand and hatchet to lend her for protection. He faced the other slowly while walking towards Sarita. Lee remembered that when he had to put down his brother long after he turned, it did not make it easier to take another life. Everyone gave Lee supportive nods. Once Lee kneeled down to Sarita, he picked her up in his arms and proceeded to take her to a tent to do this, without anyone seeing. The sight of losing more of their friends may have weakened them more. But after Lee was out of everyone's sight, the remaining group faced each other, proceeded to discuss a plan for their action to take their minds off what happened. Jane and Rebecca sat down, while Mike, Bonnie, and Clem stood up. Mike was the first one to speak, and all he did nothing much but complain. I hate sitting around. We should get going. We need to give him some time, Mike. Rebecca's close to delivering the baby, Bonnie replied, still wanting to wait a little longer for the rest of the group to return. It is still a little early. I know, but it doesn't help us figure out what we're going to do next, Mike stated, folding his arms together yet again, as he stated many reasons that he should get moving soon. We still don't have any food or any water. It's freezing as hell and daylight's burning. When everyone gets here, then we can make a plan, Bonnie assured. She placed both her hands upon her hips. Lee and Luke can make us a plan. Oh, he's got a point, Jane agreed with Mike, joining in on the conversation after sitting in silence for a couple of moments. She stood up, started speaking, stating the obvious facts that they would need to take action immediately. We just can't wait here forever. There are things up ahead now, and soon we're going to have a baby to take care of. Oh, so now you care, Rebecca said in a mocking voice, recalling the many times Jane acted like a heartless, uncaring person. Well, it seems you guys are struggling, just got onto me, Jane replied, placing her hand upon her torso. That all right with you guys? I'm just trying to state the obvious. Well, you ain't exactly stepping up and volunteering to help, are you? Mike told her, with Zippo placing both of his hands onto a curled fist upon his hips. We should find Carly, Luke, and Sarah, Clementine suggested. Joining the others after all, she remained silent during the conversation. They might be in trouble and they may need help. Luke's still hurt by Carver, and Sarah just doesn't know what to do without her dad. Clementine's right, Rebecca agreed, her face showing some concern for the rest of their friends. Even after everything that has happened, there's a chance that they might still be alive. I said we go look for them. For once, Jane actually agreed with their plan and decided to help out rather than just sit there and do nothing. She placed her hand upon her hip, Wizard telling everyone about her plan. I'll go look. There's a mobile home not far from the road. Lee, Clem, and I should go check it out. Clementine nodded in agreement as she just walked beside Jane with a slight smile across her face. Thank you, Jane, Rebecca thanked, and this was the first to see from her. Before long, everyone shifted their attention towards the tent that Lee had gone into to put Sarita out of her misery. He emerged out finally, his hatchet dripping with blood. He slowly walked towards the others, his face filled with sadness. No one could ever imagine what it was like to kill someone who was still alive, but at least Sarita would not have come back as one of them, and she would be in a better place now. Without saying anything, though, Lee shifted his attention towards Clementine and Jane, deciding to make a conversation, hoping to keep his mind off of what just happened. What's going on? I was going to go and look for the others. You and Clem want to come help? Jane offered, hoping it would not upset him after what he'd just been through. She remembered when she witnessed him beating down Carver, that proving how dangerous he can be if he loses his temper. Yeah, sure, let's go have a look, Lee agreed, shifting his attention towards the rest of the group, just to make sure they were protected. You guys got something to protect yourself? No one answered his question. Instead, each of them holstered their weapons up instead. Bonnie had her AK-47, Mike had his Glock 17, Rebecca had a Colt Python she took from Carver after his death. All right, Jane, Clem, let's go, Lee replied, wanting Jane to walk first since she'd lead the way for him and Clementine to follow. Bonnie and Mike and Rebecca watched as the trio walked away into the woods and disappeared a couple of seconds later. They hoped their friends would be able to find the others and bring them back here in one piece. During the walk to the mobile home, Jane had suggested, the trio remained silent as they continued walking through the woods. The cold weather was blowing onto their faces. They did not mind the cold, and they were determined to find everyone before it got too late. Jane did a quick check on Clementine, who was walking a couple of feet further from them, giving Lee and Jane a private talk without Clem hearing. Lee, you do realize in finding your friends is out in the 1 in a million chances? As much as Lee did not want to admit it, Jane was right. Finding someone without guidance or clues nowadays made their search extremely impossible. I know it's tough, but we have to try at least. I know, Jane agreed, Wizard looking towards Clementine for a moment, had somewhat of a concerned expression for Clementine's well-being, and decided to speak with her adoptive father about it. Lee, I want to talk to you about Clementine. Okay, Lee, he replied in a curious tone with an eyebrows arch. About what? How well does Clementine know how to take care of herself? Jane inquired. She always wondered how a little girl could have made it this far. She hadn't seen any other kid for a while until they arrived at Carter's camp, with the exception of Sarah, that is. Lee thought about her question for a moment. Wasn't he made sure Clementine could not hear him? He did his best to keep her safe and try to teach her new things. Otherwise, he may have not been able to protect her at all. He does know how to use a gun and sharp weapons. Same with her. She keeps her hair short, so walkers can't grab it. That's smart. But what about you if you and Carly were never around? Have you ever thought about that? I have, Lee assured her, preparing for the day that he would no longer be able to protect her since he first taught her how to use a gun. All right, Lee, but what about your group? Jane inquired. But before she and Lee stopped in their tracks for a moment, your group looks like it's going to fall apart. I have seen this happen before. It is many times it's better to be on your own. If we do find Carly, you three could leave that group before they all start to turn on each other. They're good people, Jane. I trust them, Lee assured. But deep down, you have to admit that it was not perfect either. They had occasional arguments once or twice. They all have got problems, though. Things haven't been easy lately. Sometimes I just don't agree with what they say or do. Something we have in common then, Jane admitted, as she began to pick up the faults of their group. If we find Sarah, we do know that liability she is at times, and Rebecca's situation. She gestured her finger in a sarcastic quote. It isn't going to make things easier. There will be a fallout with their group. Lee was slightly surprised of what she was hearing. He could not imagine trying to survive out in the world on your own. Heck, he could have just been survive on his own without his first began. Jane, how could you be possible to get along without having anyone to trust? It's how I got along and how I am alive, Jane replied, with a slight grin across her face. She, Lee, and Clementine stopped when they stumbled upon the wrecked, rusty car. She wanted to make a conversation with Lee, while Jane searched for the car for anything useful. I do like most of your crew, but they do fall apart at the end. People die. Lee paid close attention to every word she was saying, but something she said puzzled him a little. If she believed that working alone was better, then why did she even bother bringing him and Clementine with them? Then why bring me and Clem with you? You're a smart guy, Lee, and Clementine's a smart kid, Jane answered. Wizard searched for inside the broken car for anything useful for the window. I'm just trying to give tools to survive. She leaned out from the car. Once she saw that there was nothing very useful, she continued the rest of her sentence. Your weapons, for example. That hatchet is good to use, but it could sometimes get stuck. That'd be bad if you got into a situation where you're surrounded. And Clementine's jacket, it looks warm, but a walker could still bite through that. Lee looked at his hatchet while Clementine looked at her jacket during the times Jane was speaking about their times. A leather jacket would be handy, Jane replied, folding her arms together across her chest as she fought back to a painful memory that continued to haunt her. I had a sister who had one. I wish I still had it. Her expression turned of someone that she looked away before it turned worse. She then looked towards the other side of the car and began to search in the back seat for anything. Clementine, who had been silent since they left Parker's Run, they decided to speak up towards Jane. I've always wanted a sister when I was little. My babysitter Sandra pretended to be secret sisters in a little game we used to play. It was kind of silly, really. You never told me that, Lee replied with a slight smile across his face. Being the big sister, it was funny, Jane admitted. She leaned out from the car again, not finding anything useful that can help them in the future. After she finished, searched up the car and began to lead the way towards their destination again. It was easy to be kind of mean, hide her things, make fun of her hair when I was the one who did that to her, put gum in her hair. Wow, that was quite mean, Clementine told her, having a second thoughts that wishing she had a sister when she was younger. Nothing I could do, really. She and I were best friends instead of sisters. Jane replied, for once raising a smile across her face, like she actually cared once rather than looking emotionless all the time. We always went to this amusement park every summer. The best part was that no one knew us there, and we just pretended we were just friends. Before continuing further, Jane had cleared her throat and placed her hand upon her forehead when she saw something in the distance. Jackpot, guys! I think we're here. Let's go. Jane began running around towards the mobile park home, Lee and Clementine following her close behind. They were arrived outside their destination, Sunshine Mobile Home Park. The mobile home park that was surrounded by fences and wooden boards along the fence, barbed wire around the top of the fences. And lying just outside the perimeter were 2 dead corpses, or one, they seemed dead at least. But then again, do walkers even sleep? We should search these walkers, Jane suggested. She knelt down and stabbed the first corpse at the side of its head, just to make sure it was dead in a scratch. Another lesson. We need to make sure the undead, dead, and corpses that don't look fresh have useful things on them. Right, Lee nodded, shifting his gaze over towards his adopted daughter Clementine to make sure she learned this. You got that, Clementine? I got it, she nodded. I'll search this one. Clementine, you keep watch, Lee said as he kneeled down to the corpse Jane had just stabbed and searched anything for it. Jane just kneeled down to the second corpse and had a gun holstered on the belt around its waist and stabbed it into its eye, just to make certain it was not coming back. I'll search this one. Lee continued to search through the dead corpses for anything useful. He found a couple of ammunition bullets that definitely would come in handy. The next thing he finally found was 2 driver's licenses they were obviously not going to need and threw them away. So that group, how long have you guys known them? Jane inquired. She took the gun off the holster of her waist and placed it around her own, and as luck would have it, it had a Glock 17 on the inside of the holster. Obviously, 3 won't fit in them. You're different from them. Clementine and Carly were all in the same group together once, Lee answered, while he stood up and finished searching the dead walker. We all used to live at a motor inn back in Macon. There were 10 of us together, even Lily. Most of us died, a couple of us went our separate ways, and since then we've just been keep moving. Nothing else you could do but keep moving nowadays, I suppose, Jane agreed. She stood up and adjusted her holster belt. But did you find anything useful? A couple of bullets and 2 driver's licenses, Lee answered, placing a couple of bullets he found into his back pocket. I doubt anyone's going to care if you have a license to drive, Jane replied in a joking tone, hoping to make a light in this current situation. Some people cling into the past. I'd keep that ammo though. It's hard to come across ammunition lately. Here, I found a nail file. These things are great. My sister always had one in her purse. I always jabbed my hand every time I tried to reach in, and even been my hand in it. Come on, let's go. Jane walked around the perimeter, searching for a way inside. Lee and Clementine followed closely, but Jane stopped when she stumbled across a couple dead corpses. She kneeled down for a few seconds and stabbed it on the side of its head. Like I said, you can never be sure if they're dead. Here, help me move it. Lee was unsure as to why, nevertheless, but they to look for a way inside. Lee and Clementine followed closely, but Jane had stopped when she stumbled yet another dead corpse. She kneeled down just for a couple of seconds and stabbed it on the side of its head. Like I said, you can never be too sure if they're dead. But of course, Jane had helped roll the corpse onto its back. After he moved it out of the way, his expression changed from somewhat hopeful when they found something familiar. The walker was on top of it. Sarah's glasses. Clementine picked up the glasses and placed them in her pocket. Now she had a little hope to find her friends may still be alive. I don't know if she made it out, guys, Jane apologized, immediately assuming the worst when she saw Sarah's glasses. Without them, she may not be able to see very well. We don't know if she's dead, Clementine replied, refusing to give up hope that Sarah was still out there on her own, or with someone. Look, guys, I know we want to find her, but... Jane was cut off mid-sentence when she heard muffled screamings coming from nearby. Get off! Sarah, calm down! Sarah, listen to Luke. I don't believe it. Jane gasped completely of what they just found their friends, Out of all the places in the world they have been brought together, either this was a fate or a very coincidence. It's Carly, Luke, and Sarah! Lee gasped, eager to find a way inside as soon as possible. Come on! The trio just walked to the side next to sense what have happened. They discovered a hole in the fence that was big enough for them to fit through. Lee stopped by the hole in the fence when Jane ordered them to stop for a moment. Lee, wait! This might not end up the way you wanted to, Jane warned him, trying to prepare for the worst. Are you prepared for the worst? If they're in there and alive and not bitten, and they're in trouble, they need our help, Lee explained. But just like Jane said, he was not prepared for the worst. Wait. Can't wait. No one will ever be prepared for the worst. Come on, let's go. Lee, wait! Jane attempted to stop him before doing something crazy, but she was unable to stop him. Instead of wanting to risk him getting himself killed, she got another scratch all and forced him and Clementine to follow them beside her. God damn it! Lee ran through the little park and leaped over a wooden fence, like an athlete would have encountered the walkers. He raised his hatchet and stabbed the closest walker. Killing it with it, he proceeded to finish off the next walker, but it suddenly collapsed down when it attacked him from behind. Jane gave it somewhat of an annoyed expression as she placed her weapon back in her pocket. Lee, we need to slow down. We might run into hundreds of them. We need to take this easy. Lee nodded in agreement and took a deep breath, realizing that what he just did could have got himself killed. Alright, let's take it nice and slow. Jane agreed and walked towards one of the trailers, ducked down from behind it, using it for cover. She then turned her attention back towards Lee and Clementine, who kneeled down from behind her, and gave him more advice. Aim for the knees first. They easily fall down, and you can easily take them out with a knife in the head. Lee nodded in response, assuring her with a nod, and understood. Alright, let's see what we got here, Jane said, standing up again and peeking her head through the corner to observe the area. A barricade made out of multiple homemade stuff was blocked nearly a day with two walkers, who tried to join the others to investigate the noise. The other side of that barricade, multiple walkers surrounded their trailer, trying to break inside. Lee immediately assumed that that's where their friends were. There was another dead corpse among them nearby, unsure if it was dead or not. To top it off, there was a pickup truck near the other mobile home. Now they just need to figure out ways to get there, rescue their friends, without getting spotted.